thank our sponsor, Parati's Quality Meats, located in Cranford, New Jersey, serving customers all over New Jersey for the past 50 years. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Coach's Talk presented by the Shore Football Report. And we have head football coach of Manasquan Warriors, Coach Jay Price. Coach, thank you for coming on the show today.
Nope, it's an honor to be here.
That's awesome, man. I was telling you earlier that I was looking up your history and I was writing everything down and my pen ran out of ink. There was so much great info that Manasquan has produced back to 1927?
1927.
Wow, 1927. Oh, man. I'm a traditional guy, and when you talk about tradition and short conference power and also state power, Manasquan's on top of that list. It really is. And me as a head coach going into your school and looking in the hallways of all those pictures that you have on there back in the 20s leading up to the current in black and white, and then it turns to color. That's really unique thing, isn't it, Coach?
No, it is. Even as a history teacher, it's a pretty cool thing to walk down those halls, especially when you know some of the stories behind them. You read about the old guys who played in the 30s, went off to World War II. Even one of our head coaches, Granville McGee, left after winning 4 titles, was a major running a prisoner of war camp in Canada, came back and coached for 15 more years and had a couple more titles. And, he commanded some of his former players. It's the place is loaded with histories. If there's no such thing as ghosts, someone's got to tell us.
It's a kind of eerie feeling walking down those hallways and looking. I feel like the pictures are staring at you.
Oh, without a doubt.
Right?
Yeah. And you can definitely feel it, especially in a bad year.
Now, there's not too many of those years, Coach. But I heard from Coach Cahill, he told me Jack Nicholson showed up one time. Is that true? Is he a Manasquan alumni?
Yeah, he did. He comes back more than people realize. But that particular day, he came back. They had named the theater after him, and he wanted to come see it. He brought one of his girlfriends with him.
Right.
And when we found out he was in the hallways, we sent a player in to go get him and told him, you can't leave without coming out and talking to us. Because
awesome.
He's such a fan of sports. And sure enough, he put his girlfriend in the limousine and walked out onto the field, and he was great.
We always do that. We always put our girls in the limousine, right? Yeah.
Right. Until we marry them, Rob.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. Then that's it. Then we don't go out. But that's awesome, man. And when I talk to before I introduce you, Coach, tradition to me, Vic Cabot. Vic Cabot is a guy that I really deeply respect. Me starting our football camp program at Barnegat, I told you a couple stories off the air, what he said to me and what he meant to me in my program. He took me under his wings from an opposing coach and made me feel special and made me feel like I was getting some pertinent information. And we'll talk more about it as we go on with him. But him being a head coach there for 22 years, and then he gave the torch to Coach Pete Cahill, who's now the AD, for 4 years. He stepped down to be the AD, and then you took it. And we'll talk about you right now with your resume. Coach Jay Price is the Manasquan head football coach, and this is his 11th season. Coach, you won a division championship in 2018, and you won the Central Jersey Group 2 state championship in 2016. That's correct, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. Good job with that. Prior to those years, you were an assistant, a loyal assistant for 16 years. Now, the question I'm going to ask you is this. During those years, did you ever envision that you would be a head football coach for your alma mater?
No, that wasn't my plan. I was originally going to be a naval aviator. That was always my goal. Awesome. And then when life throws you a couple curveballs and, you got to make a couple turns, I landed here, but I've been grateful ever since. It's given me everything I have. It's given me everything I've ever known.
Yeah. So you've not only experienced, you've been part of some great traditional things, and you're also creating them as you're going on now too. Prior to Manasquan, you were at Pompton Lakes right out of college for 1 year as a freshman coach. And then before that, you started your days playing football for Coach Cabot. And who was the head coach prior to Coach Cabot? Coach
Gary Chapman.
So that is great. So you got, when it comes to Manasquan, you bleed Manasquan. You do. You played there. You've been an assistant, and you're a longtime head football coach now. established. So when you talk Manasquan stuff to your program, your kids, those kids understand that it's coming from the heart with you.
Yeah, I mean it's a family place. You talked about Coach Kaboo before. When he was playing at Manasquan in the 50s, his father was a railroad guy, and he was away a lot. So he actually lived with the head coach, Hal Manson, who was his next door neighbor. So he grew up, in the household of his head coach, and Manson treated the program like it was family. On Friday nights, the boys would be on the living room floor watching films that his wife took of the previous game. His wife would be in the kitchen baking cookies with cheerleaders to raise money for varsity jackets. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of what Coach Kaboo brought to the table. And, I tell everybody, I have a family of hundreds of brothers and a bunch of uncles.
How many years ago was that? Around.
Manson?
No, when Coach Kaboo was living with his head coach, because I'm saying, was there an NJSIA back then? Because if you did that right now, having your quarterback living with you, you'd be getting phone calls, Coach.
That obviously was before the days of monitoring anything.
Before those days of now we have rules because of those things. But that's an awesome story. That is an awesome story, and we just got so much stuff with tradition. Talking tradition, Manasquan as a whole, from top to bottom since 1927, has won 585 games and only lost 232. That's amazing. That is an amazing from top to bottom, keeping consistency and winning at such a high rate. I think you've won 17, correct me if I'm wrong, 17 state sectional championships from 27?
Yeah, not all of those obviously were won on the field.
No.
A lot of those were back when they did the point system and a lot of voting. I think we have 12 on the field and 5 before that.
I mean, looking at it, Coach, in 1998, where were you?
I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. I was coaching Manasquan.
So I'm looking at that 5 straight seasons you guys won state sectional championships. You were 58-2 in those 5 years. What a run. What a run.
Yeah, that was a great run. A great group of kids, too. It was, you try to always say you want 2 good classes in a row, right, to be able to make some noise and do some damage in December. But, what a blessing when you get, 4 or 5 or 6 of those classes in a row. And it just seems to feed on itself. It was that was a great run.
But, that's what we're talking about is 5 years. 2 years before it, you were 19-2. Not bad, Coach. So you were 77-4 in 7 years, 5 state championships, and 7 division championships. That's a pretty good era right there of football.
It was, and I can still remember that 97 championship game against Neptune. Yeah. I don't know if any of it's true, but they told us there was 10,000 people there. And I remember when that team, which was mostly juniors, lost, they left that game really ticked. They were angry. And that really kind of set the tone for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I actually, when Coach Kaboo was with me in a meeting, I was talking about his record, and I'm trying to beef him up and all that, and he got very upset about a couple of losses that were reminded of him. And, and he just was like, that one game here, that one game there. I'm like, really? I'll never forget this story, Coach, and then we'll get right into your process. Before our first game, we just played Monsignor Donnan. My first varsity football game, we won 42-21. We were all excited, our guys. We go to now play your team, your 2006 team, which I think is the best football team ever in the Shore Conference. You had how many Division I players on that team?
At least 4.
4.
They were pretty good.
So we go there. Our kids are feeling good. My coaches are realistic. Our kids think we got a chance, right? So we go there. Coach Kaboo puts his arm around me and goes, all right, Rob, listen. He goes, if the game let us do our thing. He goes, and don't get discouraged. You got a good thing going here. You got no seniors. You guys are going to be good. Trust me. You got to just keep up, be positive with the kids. If it gets out of control, I'll pull the plug. Now, how many coaches get to say that? But he said that with all respect, and he did. And he said that. So the first play we run double dive. We didn't show it in the scrimmages. Nemeth comes down, pushes the fullback out of the way, and grabs the tailback, and the helmet's connected, and they had to stop the game. I went, oh, great. And we knew this kid was a stud. We couldn't block him. So what do you do? You want to read him. So
Sure.
the helmets had to be dislodged and like a jigsaw puzzle. All right. The third play, we run a screen and we go 58 yards. I think that was the longest play ever that you guys gave up. We're at the 4-yard line, first and goal. We ended up at the 12 because your D-line mauled us, pushed us back. Well, you beat us by 60 points in that game. And, I knew what was going to happen. And we tried everything. We scouted the officials in the scrimmages to see how quick they were with starting the clock.
Sure.
And I had Mike Burke, my assistant, that actually went to their scrimmages to see if they were a slow clock team or fast clock. They were a fast clock team. That was not good for us, Coach. So they started the clock all the way. We tried to milk it too, and you still beat us by 60 something, and it could have been 160. And I thanked them after the game. It was awesome. But that was an experience for us, witnessing in person. Like I said, one of the greatest, I'm going to say the greatest team I ever played was that 2006 Manasquan football team, and you won the state championship, of course, that year. That was a great team to coach.
They were great kids. Of course, Brad Newman, who you're talking about, went on to play at Boston College. He actually started his freshman year. He played both ways. He was a fullback and a defensive end. Mealy went on to Syracuse, and who else? Forrest set a Rutgers record for the most games ever started by a lineman. That was, I honestly felt bad a lot of times for the backups to those kids who would have been great high school football starters. They would have had great careers, but they're sitting behind these guys, and it was frustrating for them to a point, but they all got along. It was just a great group of kids to coach.
I love the fact when people would always say that Coach Kaboo brought the zone run game into the short conference. His 4-3 defense, when he turned it to the Virginia 4-3, and he put that DN inside the tight end. Everybody's now looking at Virginia Tech, what he's doing. But anything you guys did, you were good at. You didn't do a lot of different variation stuff. This is what we do. And we have plays off it, stop us. And he was awesome. And, of course, there was a play action. I remember when you had a guy, Jax Lanfried, and a good friend of mine, Bob Generelli, you guys played. And his quote in the paper was, Jack Lanfried was playing with a tuxedo on and it wasn't wrinkled. Nobody touched him. Coach, it was like your blocking has always been the best. You're just a tough team, and guys that we took a lot of notes in our off seasons leading up to varsity. We wanted to try and figure out what you guys did behind the scenes, and it's the way you go about it. You have great kids. It's chemistry. It's just something about how certain areas in the state have it all the time, and that's what we're gonna hear about today when you talk about it, Coach. Now the process. I love this part. I want you to talk about how you became a head football coach at Manasquan High School from your early days when you were playing football at Manasquan and everything that led up to it, because everything you did, you cashed in at the right time when you got the head job back in 2011. So let's hear the process from your end.
Well, probably not terribly exciting, but I wasn't allowed to play Pop Warner as a kid. My dad had taken me over to a practice, and he wasn't real thrilled. There was a lot of yelling going on, a lot of physicality going on. So I played soccer. But I grew up around football. My dad was a sports writer for 40 years. I was on the campus of Wagner College throughout my childhood. I remember Coach Callahan coaching there as a defensive backs coach. I was at Giants camps, just anything to tag along with my dad. But I started playing for Coach Kaboo in 85. When he came, I was a sophomore, and he really put together a phenomenal staff of head coaches. He brought back Coach Hawkins, who was a legend in the Shore. He brought Coach Donnie Reed in from Brick Memorial. Coach Scheidt was a great offensive tactician. Bob Lempa is still one of my favorite teachers I've ever had. And Pete Cahill, who's been there ever since. So it was a staff of head coaches, and it was phenomenal. We learned how to watch films. We learned how to go about practice. We often felt like we knew what plays the offense was running just by how the offensive tackle put his hand on the ground, or he twisted a cleat one way or the other. So, we really learned the game from those guys, and that kind of stuff stayed with me ever since. When I graduated from high school, I actually enlisted in the Navy to take an appointment to the United States Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island. I played for a guy named Mike Drake up there, who had been the head coach of Western New Mexico University. Math and I didn't agree with each other. I think I'm kind of allergic to it. And I was, what do they call it? I was academically disenrolled from Navy. But I got an honorable discharge. I came home, and I swear to God I was going to enlist in the Marines. But my dad fought with me on it. And then one day, I don't know how or why, I got a call from Coach Hamilton at Trenton State. And he said, I'd like you to come out here and play for us. So I did. We went out there and played for them for 4 years. Under guys like Kelly Myers and Hank Johns, who are great defensive coaches. And then once I graduated, I applied for a job at Manasquan, but they already actually hired another guy who coached at Manasquan for 20-something years, Rich Reed. And I went up to Pompton Lakes, and I worked for a coach named Gary Luciani, who was a legend in his own right up in Bergen County. He let me run the freshman offense, and I had a blast. I thought it was great. I was actually coaching with Rich LaDuca, who's now the Point Beach AD, was our defensive coach. Had an absolute blast up there. And then the following year, thank goodness, a job opened up at Manasquan. And I came down and started coaching here. And coaching under that staff and with Coach Kaboo was just a phenomenal experience, and we were lucky. He was good friends with Coach Welsh at Virginia and Art Marcos, who was a defensive back coach who followed him from Navy to Virginia. And that's where you mentioned the 4-3 before. We got it from Rick Lance, who wound up at Virginia. He had coached with Lou Saban at Miami. He coached with Welsh and Belichick at Navy. So he came right in, and then we would go down and spend a week there, our entire staff, and we lived there, eat there, breathe there, go to meetings, practices. And then once Coach Welsh retired, we were going to Boston College with Coach Spaziani. And then we wound up at North Carolina State for a while with Demarest and D'Amato. And then once Coach Golden got Temple, we were there with him and Coach D'Onofrio, and then we followed Coach Flood from Hofstra to Delaware to Rutgers. So we Coach always pushed learning. You had to get better every year. You had to adapt. You had to find the new things that were going on, and you had to keep current. And it was like getting a master's degree in football.
Yeah.
But when Coach passed in 2007, Pete took the job, and then Pete had some administrative goals. He wanted to get those 3 years on his retirement or his pension, and he kind of bounced back and forth, and then I was just lucky enough to be in the right spot at the right time, and all we're doing now is just taking care of this gift that Coach Kaboo left.
It says a lot for you, though, Coach. I mean, you being a guy who went to school there, and I always say this, that picture a high school kid who's a high school kid. He's kind of a goofball. He does things, and if there's administrators there later on when you're an adult, they're going to remember those things. I guess either A, you weren't a goofball, or B, you weren't a goofball in the hallways where people saw you. So they looked at you in a way where, because sometimes you need to go out of your own school to go somewhere else to kind of broaden your horizons. But that's a credit to you on how you were probably growing up. And I love the fact they passed the torch to one of their own.
Yeah, we all had our opportunities to go other places. I remember after that 2006 season, Coach brought us all into the office and said, hey, if you ever want to go somewhere or move up the ladder, your stock's never going to be higher. Now's the time. And I actually did have an interview at another school, but I felt like I was cheating. I felt like I was sitting there, and he actually asked me a great question. And it wasn't about football. My son was 5 years old at the time, and he would come through after school. He would come through practice. And he said, if you're going to go drive 45 minutes up the Parkway, you're never going to see your kid after school. He's never going to be at practice. Your daughters are never going to be there. And that really made, I grew up in this building. I grew up on these fields, and my kids did too. If anybody wore red to practice, Coach, my daughters would be all over them in the stretch line. Dad, this kid's wearing red. He can't wear red on the field. I mean, it was insane. And they're still brainwashed. But it's a great place. I'm the luckiest person on the planet.
Yeah, and you're nothing but positive every time I talk to you. You've been always good to me too. I really appreciate it. I love keeping the connection with Barnegat. Well, when I was at Barnegat with Manasquan, you've always been good to us with scrimmages or games. You always were a tough opponent. You always had the bar real high, And that's where we always wanted to get to your level. So, Coach, that was an impressive part on the process. All right, Coach, I'm going to get rid of this mask. I'm sick of it. No more COVID bad talk. You and I know as coaches all the negativity that was out there with COVID. I want to just hear something positive that the Manasquan football program and yourself learned about last year's COVID season.
It's hard to find positives in that COVID era, but I've seen all the coaches that you've had come on, and I agree 100% about, how we implemented technology, and everybody was either Zooming or using Google Classroom or whatever platform they had to teach kids and go back and teach them about the game. But you know what? The one thing I think that was positive for kids today in this I want it right now era, they all realized from their spring seasons that this could all be taken away from you in a heartbeat. This could just be obliterated. And if we're lucky enough to step on the field and play our first game, you may not play for the rest of the year. And this was it for some of those seniors. And that really, my brother is a mental or mindset coach. He's probably going to get upset at me. I don't even know what they call it anymore. Mm-hmm. But he's always talking and teaching the kids about being where your feet are and being where you are now. Mm-hmm. And I remember, and I talked to the kids a little bit about it's called the Stockdale paradox, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And he used to talk about the guys who were looking forward to going home on Christmas were the ones who lost it. And they couldn't handle being a prisoner. Mm-hmm. But the guys who woke up in the morning and said, you know what? I'm going to do 100 push-ups today and make myself stronger. Or I'm going to remember a poem and I'm going to become smarter. And, our kids, we tried to teach that and they really bought in. We didn't do much in the summer except for condition last year, but they loved it. They were out of the house. They were with their friends. I heard you say we're screaming and yelling at them about masks, but then 8 of them get in the car and drive home together. What the hell are we even doing this for? But they loved the structure. They loved getting to the field and being together and practicing, and they had a blast. And it was just, I think they really, they want everything now, but I think they really appreciated the day-to-day. And then when we got on the field for our first game, it was awesome. And then our second game, even though we lost, was awesome. They just enjoyed, being on the field, and they were kids again. And that was really what got me. They really learned to love the game again.
Coach, like I said before, you guys are a tradition, but with the COVID, there's no tradition. It just happened. So you were actually living history together. So now these kids are always looking to you guys as, been there, done it, back in the 27, all the building structures. But at that moment right there, you were equal. You were equal because you were learning on the run and you were watching the same news stations as at the same time, right? So that was kind of a humbling feeling because we lost power. We lost control.
Absolutely. But we were kind of prepared for that, right? I mean, I remember back in 2001, after 9/11, they made an announcement that day that all extracurricular activities were canceled, right? And we had to send everybody home. Only Coach Kaboo could do this, but we had a meeting of the team in the locker room, and I'll never forget it. He said, we can send you home now. You're going to go home. You're going to watch the news with your families, and you're going to cry because we lost a bunch of friends. Or for 2 hours, we can stay here. We can practice together. We can get something done, and we can just be happy for 2 hours. Whole team, whole staff, we're staying and practicing.
Wow.
And we got it done.
Really?
You go back to Sandy, right? When Sandy occurred, we had people without homes. We had people without power, water, electricity, food. Our kids were shoveling people out. We were helping people. We were together every day. COVID, so we had a blueprint for how to handle it, and that was what we do. When it gets hard, we pull together, right?
Yeah.
We stay together as a team, and we huddle up as a family, and we move on. And like you said, I was watching you today, we suck it up, and we make the best of a bad situation, but we do it together. And as long as we're together, we can get through anything.
That's the ingredients, though, Manasquan's always had for all those years, Coach. So I guess you're right. It's no different. Different obstacles happen. You guys make the best out of it, and you win the day. Okay, now, Coach, I want you to talk briefly about your schedule and your division, your 2021 high school football schedule. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, just like everybody else in the Shore, the whole schedule is made to be competitive, right? Mm-hmm. They wanted to get rid of the lopsided games and the blowouts, and I think you'd agree they've kind of done that. They've kind of made everybody's schedule pretty competitive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would agree, the Shore Conference is so much better than it was coaching wise 30 years ago. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
could look at his schedule and you'd have something circled and say, okay, you know what, we can beat this team. We're going to get some younger kids in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that really doesn't happen anymore. Every game is competitive. Every team is so much better coached than they were 30 years ago. It's fun. You know, the short conference is a great place to play.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking forward to our schedule, but it presents itself with a lot of challenges. You know, we open up at the Swamp on Thursday, the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously that's another school with a lot of pride, a lot of tradition. They got some great athletes. You know, they got great defensive end, a skilled quarterback. That, you know, they're and you know, playing in the Swamp is one of the greatest places to play in the short conference. So we get to start with a great one. You know, then we got Red Bank, who has a new head coach. You know, Coach Fallon grew up on River Road practically. You know, so he's kind of home where his dad was. He brought Coach Peach with him. Coach Barnes is back on his staff, so they'll be ready to go that second week when they come down to us. Then we take it on the road again. We go up to Ocean with Coach Klein. It's always hard to play the Spartans in their arena, and they return a lot of skilled kids. They got a great quarterback. Then we come back home and we face Red Bank Catholic, right? And who doesn't want to play the best teams in the Shore? They've been outstanding for the last 20 years and have been phenomenal. So they come back home to us. We're looking forward to that. Then we take it on the road again. We go back up, play Coach Petruzzi up at Raritan. All right, and anybody who's played the Rockets know that you're getting their A game every week. They're well coached. They're tough kids. Then we go on the road again. We play Toms River East for the first time in Manasquan's history. We've never played them in a football game, but we'll go down and meet the Raiders. And again, another great coach team, tough kids. And it's always hard to win in Toms River, no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we have the pod play, which I think we're all trying to get used to, that, not knowing who you're going to play until the last minute. And then you got to scramble for film. Then obviously states. And then we come back home for Thanksgiving and we get Wall again. Which our kids always look forward to. That's kind of like a season unto itself.
Yeah.
And I think the kids really enjoy it. We're looking forward. Every game on that schedule presents challenges for us, and we're looking forward to trying to overcome them.
Coach, that's one of the things I want to ask you about. First of all, playing Middletown South, you added on that game, right?
Yes.
That's opening day with Middletown South, two traditional powers in the Shore Conference and the state. That's a must-see game for everybody right there. But the one on the bottom is very special. Again, we're talking tradition. And when we talk tradition, we talk Thanksgiving Day games. And it just happens to be that game is against a team who right now at this moment is one of the hottest teams in the Shore Conference the last couple of years, Wall. And you guys being a power, that's just a tremendous atmosphere every year. What's the buildup? What is the community response to a Wall Manasquan traditional game?
Well, Thanksgiving itself has its own aura around it in Manasquan, and that dates back to the 30s when we were actually Point Beach was our Thanksgiving game, and then it became Point Borough for a number of years, and then in '99 they changed it up to play Wall. A bunch of alumni from both schools got together and switched it up. But we start out, it's a short week. We know it's a short week. We're usually coming out of a playoff game at that point. So we have 3 days to get ready. But all week in school, they're decorating the hallways. They're hosting pep rallies. You have the bonfire and parade on Thanksgiving Eve. A couple of us actually walked it last year, knowing we weren't even going to have a game. Mm-hmm. And then the next day is, everybody heads over to the firehouse. It seems like it's 7:00 in the morning, and they have libations and pork roll and cheese sandwiches ready for everybody.
I'll be there next year. Yeah, good.
And then they walk over to the school. Sometimes it's a late arriving crowd, but it always is a crowd. I can remember there were a couple times both of us were 3 and 5 coming into Thanksgiving, and the place was packed at 10:00 in the morning. You couldn't find a seat, and you're going out for warm-ups, and it's like you're playing in the third quarter. It's a great atmosphere, and there's great coaches on both sides of the ball. There's great kids playing against each other. They all know each other, and it really is a special thing. Coach hated Thanksgiving games because he didn't like the limits on preparation. But deep down inside, for our town, it's the second biggest business night of the year for local bars and restaurants.
Wow.
The whole town gets into it. and really rallies behind it. It's a good time, and I haven't known anything different since I was a little kid.
Really? So you're telling me that's the second biggest day? That's including summer?
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge. And your town, feeds off each other. You need each other to help each other, with the economy too. So that I didn't realize that game was huge for the businesses.
Yeah, I mean, this last time I talked to this particular owner, he would say that you come into Memorial Day weekend, Saturday night was huge because it's the start of summer, it's the kickoff. But he owned a place right on the parade route, and every night before Thanksgiving Eve, the place was jammed, it was mobbed.
That's great.
And the kids love passing that place by because people are yelling, hooting, and hollering, and filled with nothing but alumni, and it's a good small town feeling.
Coach, that is awesome. That is great to hear that other people are benefiting from a big build-up football game like that. I loved hearing that. Let's talk about the division right now. The Constitution, the newly formed division, which is now called the Constitution. To me, it's confusing. I'm so much A North, B South, but us coaches have to be like, what's the name of our division now? It's the Constitution, okay. But they put competitive play in your divisions, and looking at top to bottom, I see well-coached. I mean, so instead of me always saying that about every team, going from the bottom up on that right-hand side, Red Bank Catholic, they got it going right now. They got a lot of guys back and a lot of guys that just get hopped over. Red Bank with Coach Fallon. I mean, he's a guy that is going to juice up the program, a new coach, and they got some athletes there. Raritan, they were very young last year and a lot of key guys back. Ocean's well coached, like you said, and that dynamic quarterback they have. And you guys have a lot of guys back and, again, well coached and all that. That's competitive from top to bottom. Would you agree?
100%. I've never been one. I've never really, we're going to play whoever you schedule. It is what it is. And, honestly, and I know it's cliche right now, we're looking at a one-game schedule with South. But, in terms of how they put these divisions together and the formula they've used, except for a couple glitches, I think they've done a pretty good job. From top to bottom, it is competitive. And if you look at the scores from the last couple of seasons, it indicates that. It supports that.
Yeah, I know there's like you said, there's not really programs that are always traditionally losing. So there's coaching going on everywhere in the short conference. And me being at Barnegat, we would wonder who we're playing and it'd be nervous. And I would be nervous no matter who you put on my schedule because I always found something positive. Of course, if we played you guys, we get you as a non-conference. I'm like, oh my God, does it get any harder? Jesus Christmas. But, there's good football from top to bottom of the short conference. And of course, you're one of those schools. And you're one of those schools, Group 2 schools, that always gets fed to the bigger schools because of the word tradition. I hate to say it, but you're embracing that type of schedule, like you said, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've heard you say it several times on here. You want to be playing in meaningful games, and we're lucky, and I consider us lucky that all the games on that schedule are meaningful games. They're each going to present challenges that kids are going to have to overcome. We're going to have to get better every week if we're going to achieve our goals. And it's what you want, I think, as a high school football player, to be playing in meaningful games every week.
Yeah, and you guys definitely know what meaningful football games are every single year, Coach. Good take on your schedule and your division. All right, now, Coach, I want you to talk about the coaches that make us head football coaches look good, the glue to the program. Let's hear some names of your 2021 Manasquan Warriors coaching staff.
Yeah, like you said, right? You're only as good as your assistants. I've heard you say that every week. Obviously players play a role in it as well.
Yeah.
But we have somebody on staff, believe it or not, from every decade, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
It's a pretty good staff. But obviously, Pete Cahill has been around forever. He came when he was hired with Coach Kaboo in '85. He's been here ever since. He's been a defensive back coach. He's been a coordinator. He's a great friend. It's hard to find anybody with, as much class and knowledge as Pete. He's just a phenomenal person to have on staff. Brian Lee has been here forever. He won a title here in '93 as a player. He came back 10 years later. He's been working with quarterbacks. He's our wide receivers coach now. He's also a baseball coach for us, and he's ultimately the heartbeat of the program. You talked about bleeding blue before. If the building has a heart, it's Coach Lee, and the kids all know that, and they feed off it. My dad, who all the kids call Senior, worked under Coach Kaboo in '98 as a wide receivers coach, and then we grabbed him when he retired from sports writing in 2011. He's been with us ever since. He's coaching.
What do you call him?
What's that?
What do you call your dad?
I call him Dad.
Dad.
I can't call him Senior. I'm not sure how you react to that. But yeah, he's been with us, and the kids love him. It's always been a dream of mine to work with my dad in some capacity since I was a little kid, and I'm lucky to be able to do that now. Billy Burchett played for us as well. He won a title back in '05. He's our offensive line coach, works with our extra point team. He's a man of few words, but he's very knowledgeable. The kids love him, and he does a great job with what he has. Daryl Falkenberg was actually a Point Borough grad, played for Point when we were playing against him on Thanksgiving. He wound up moving to Brielle and running our Pop Warner program for a number of years. We got pretty friendly. He loves football. He's a student of the game. He's been coaching running backs with us since. Another player for us, Eddie Capalco, is coaching defensive line. He won a title for us, or helped us win a title as well back in the late 2000s. Works with the D-line and the kickoff team. A great worker, great work ethic. Eric Howland is a volunteer for us. He helps out with linebackers and has been with us for a while. He was also a former player. And this year we're bringing a new addition in Justin Sella. He's going to be our offensive coordinator this year. He coached with Neptune under Coach Fallon the last couple of years. Obviously, he was a phenomenal quarterback in his own right back in the mid-'90s. Went on to play, drove Neptune to a #1 ranking in the state. Mm-hmm. Went to Illinois. Western Carolina, I think, is where he finished. Won a state title at Monroe, and now he's back with us. We were lucky to steal him away. Our freshman coaches are Rich Griffith, who played with us in the '70s. I hope he's not mad at me for saying that. But he's great, along with John Morris. They do a great job of making football fun for kids. Rich also works with our strength coach, Mike Johansson, who we got out of retirement. He spent over 20 years working as a strength coach at Rutgers. Does a phenomenal job with all our athletes in the weight room and conditioning, and has really been a great addition for us. I'm going to throw in our film guys too. Bruce Brejnahan, who's been a fixture in this town for years. He's kind of like the patron saint of athletics in Manasquan. Does it along with my brother who films, and every once in a while we get our old film guy back who's the mayor of our town. How many towns can say that their mayor was actually videotaping games? Our trainer is Kevin Highland, and we have great doctors who come and never miss a game. Dr. Buttle, Petrosini, Gonzalez are great guys, and I don't know if they've missed many games since, but all those guys do a phenomenal job for us. They're the hardest workers I know. Nobody bats an eye at meeting on Sunday mornings and working through the day. And, mm-hmm. You never have to ask them for more. It's almost embarrassing because they all have families mm-hmm. but yet they're, you do the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're all here 60 hours a day, and you're stunned that these guys actually find time to put together mm-hmm. a lesson plan and teach. Yeah. I shouldn't say that, but it's the case.
I love that. Is impressive coaching staff. You adding a new guy, and Coach Sella, who does have a great reputation throughout. But the one guy that I have a little bit of a connection with is Coach Pete Cahill. You played for him. He was a head coach, and now he's an administrator, and he's also a coach with you. So you've seen him in full circle. Like you said, great guy. I mean, he was 34-11 as a coach for 4 years. Was very successful. Just having him on the staff and being an administrator, and that's quite a positive thing for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I've literally known him since I was 15 years old. And I'd like to think we've been great friends since then.
Good.
He's always been somebody I can call at 3:00 in the morning. Coach Kaboo always used to call it the foxhole, and guys in the foxhole were. His rule was it had to be a guy you could call at 3:00 in the morning, mm-hmm. and he'd come running, no questions asked. And Pete's always been that type of guy, for anybody. But with his knowledge and talking to him, we can finish each other's sentences on the phone on Saturdays. It's been a great relationship, and I'm lucky. Brian Lee's been there forever. A lot of these guys have been there for over 15 years themselves, and it's a blessing. And they all come back want a little piece of that same thing, that same family feel.
Again, it comes back around to that word tradition.
Sure.
It's something that you can leave and come back 3 years later and know that it's still being run the same way, which is a winning way. Okay, now the fun stuff, Coach. We're going to talk 2021 Manasquan Warriors football team. But before you go on, just tell us what you guys run offensively, defensively, and then get right into those key returning starters that I know you're excited about.
Offensively, we'll go right with a straight cliche. We're going to be a multiple team. We'll give you different looks. 2 backs, 1 back, with different zone and gap schemes. Defensively, we're going to stay with the 4-3. We're going to stay with what we know, and give you different looks in the secondary as well to complement what we're doing up front.
Yeah, good. Now, Coach, let's talk about those key returning players you have that I know that's getting you smiling every day during the off season. Let's hear about those guys.
Sure, I'll see if I can get as many in as I can. But they're all great kids. A lot of these guys have been around playing, starting for 3 years, and they're easy to love. They're just hard workers. They're good kids. But Cole Kozlowski's a senior. He's going to play multiple positions on offense. He'll play multiple positions on defense, and has really evolved into a leader. He's worked real hard in the offseason, and we're really looking forward to what he can bring to the table. A couple other seniors who are coming back for us are Pat Woodford, and James Prendergast. Both struggled with a little bit of injury last year, but they'll be two-way players for us in the backfield and in the secondary. I'm returning a couple of linebackers, Ryan Burns and Dylan LeBlanc, who are both starters, both 3-year starters for us, who've also worked hard and are looking forward to a good year. We have a lot of leadership up front this year. Guys have been playing for 3 years. J.J. Kavanaugh, Robbie Marks, Ed Dingler. We're moving Ryan Burns onto the offensive line, Dominic Rosino, Joe Franklin. And our success always will, and forever probably will come from how well everybody plays up front on both sides of the ball. We need good defensive ends in the 4-3, and we need good guards on offense for what we're running. But we have a quarterback now who's coming back and experienced in Brett Patton. Jameer Howard's a great athlete we have who will see multiple positions on offense and defense. And we got some newcomers coming in. Dan Hyland, James Gilmore, Shea Keating, Jack Detlinger, Marcus Vallis, Matt O'Donnell are all guys who are going to step in along with Ryan Deegan and give us some support that we need for these guys. We've cut our teeth. This class as sophomores had a rough go, but we threw their feet to the fire. I think we were starting as many as 8 on defense as sophomores, and they got beat up a little bit. They came back last year and had improved tremendously. And this year, we're hoping that improvement is exponential with a little bit of maturity. And I think we could do some damage.
Coach, that one of the sophomores was your quarterback.
Yes, Brett Patton.
And having him in a COVID season kind of maybe didn't help his growth. What do you think about now having a whole off season and having Coach Sella too on the staff too? What do you think of his progress for this year?
Well, I mean, at a Group 2 school, and I'm sure you know this, these guys are getting pulled in 9,000 different directions. With the advent of travel ball and everybody's getting pulled into this showcase and that showcase. He's been working, but he's also been being pulled in a million directions. But when Justin came on, he immediately hit Zoom, and he huddled up with both Kaz and Brett, and he introduced some new vocabulary, some new concepts to them, teaching them a lot of different things about the position, and you can see it. You can start to see the light bulb go on. You can see the growth start to happen, and I think he will have matured tremendously from his sophomore year. He'll be embarrassed for me to say this, but I've had him in the classroom, and I can see his maturity in academics over the course of the last year. He's actually taken grades seriously and understands that this is a package instead of just being the jock stud all the time. So Yeah, I mean, he's going to have another year under his belt. The good thing is we got him for another year after this, but
Yep.
I think he's really going to be able to support these seniors pretty well moving forward and navigating all these challenges that our division's going to throw out.
Yeah, I knew that you started a lot of those sophomores, and you wish you want more gameplay being played, but it was equal. Everybody in the whole state had the same difficulties, or worse.
Right.
So you have them back. You're, add in tradition. That word again, we're going to always talk about with guys coming back. Exciting brand of football. Now we have state playoffs out there, and hopefully you guys can make a great run like you have done in the past. Yourself and all the other teams in the past at Manasquan too. So I'm sure your expectations are the same as every year, right?
Yeah, they don't change, but as we told them last Thursday night, we got one game on our schedule right now. That's the only game we got to worry about.
Coach, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming here, but I want to add one thing because I think I got it. If I was coaching again and I had to play Manasquan, I'm going to attack you one way, and that's your popcorn. And that's your popcorn, Coach, because through the years that we had to play you, we had to scout. So the head coaches in the stands and my coaches would have these techs, and they would run down and take all these popcorns, and they would hold them. I said, why? Well, my line coach wanted 2 of them. So whatever that popcorn is, it is so good that it distracts everybody from the game. Now, your ball boy, okay, wasn't he on the field a couple times with some of the popcorns and the balls and the tea? And
not just one. I can tell you this has happened multiple years dating back over the last 27 years. We're coming out for the third quarter kickoff after half, and if it wasn't Coach Kaboo or Cahill or myself, you're turning around, you're looking for the kid with the tea and the football, and he's over by the damn popcorn machine. And he has the tea still and the ball, and he's got his popcorn with him. I'll tell you what. You'll make the band very happy. That's their fundraiser. If you're going to go over and consume popcorn, you got us.
Coach, you might have gave too much info on your football program with the popcorn. The schemes are not important, but it's the popcorn and how you make it. That's where teams are going to start strategically taking away your winning tradition with the popcorn. So, Coach,
we will have our ball boy on lockdown this year.
Coach, always a pleasure. Looking forward to covering you. Now, here's what you got to do. We know you're going to be in the top 10 and top 20 on the field. I have a top 20 social media view count on the Coaches Talk. You're going to have this posted probably in 4 hours. Then it's up to you to see how high you're going to be by September 3rd on how many view hits you're going to get. Now, I would recommend going to that business that makes so much money off you guys on Thanksgiving and tell them all when they order their hamburgers or order a beer to press click so they watch it. You know what I'm saying? So I have some ways that you guys can get it going, but I'm sure you'll get your top view counts on your own. So
I'm going to head downstairs right now and get my daughter on it. She's my social media expert.
Yeah, great. Yeah, my daughter knows more about stuff than me too. Coach, thank you, man. Pleasure. Looking forward to many, many years of covering Manasquan Warrior football. I'll be on your sidelines at some of your big games. I know you playing Saturdays, what makes it very convenient for a lot of people. Do you like playing Saturdays?
I do. I actually do. I love it.
Good.
It's
unique.
And again, you grow up in this town. That's all you knew. We had one night game here. It was in 1946. We had a good running back by the name of his nickname was J.P. Morgan. It was Alfie Morgan. We were playing Lakewood, who was a power at the time, and they went out and rented lights and brought him in. And we tied. And they decided never again will we ever have lights in Manasquan.
That damn tie. Well, that's great, man. Again, there's nothing better than on a Saturday to go watch a Manasquan football game, of course, in the stands and eat the popcorn, because I didn't like going there on Saturdays playing you guys because I would smell the popcorn and not come out with a win playing you guys. So, somehow that popcorn is equated into everything that we do when we go there. Coach, thank you very much. A lot of respect from my program to you guys, and that will never change. As long as you're doing what you're doing, keep it up.
Right back at you, Coach.
All right.
Same back. You did a great job with Barnegat. This is awesome. It's fun to watch. It keeps us all busy here in the office. So keep going.
Coach, my phone's been going off the hook going, when are we posting the Manasquan film? So I know there's at least one person that wants to watch it. It's probably your opponents. So I'll edit out the popcorn scene. So that's that. Coach, thank you very much.
You too, Coach.